And my boss told me shortly after, he says, Les, I was so much for just letting you go at that point.
I can only imagine that you would have been staying late most nights in that business during that period where you were top surveyor.
Before they bought us, had given us all assurances that they wouldn't delayer the senior management. I was a managing director by that time. And the first thing they did was delayer the managing directors, the senior management, the people who had built the company, the builders of the company. They handed it over. There was tears and snorters everywhere. That was heartbreaking.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Talks Trades. Today I'm with Les Meikle, the founder and former owner of Wise Property Care. He's going to take us on a real entrepreneurial journey here on how he built that business up and exited it, and then what he's doing now in the mentoring space and what his plans are for the future. Les, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, and thanks for having us here.
I'll start where I always start. Yep. How did you get into the trades?
Okay, very much. I started in business at 15, not in business, but started employment at 15. This is back in the very early days. I'm 71 now, so we're talking about a fair distance ago. And I failed my 11 plus, which at that time was a method that the government had of trying to differentiate between people who they thought had promise and people who were going to make up the trades, if you like. So I didn't pass the test, so I didn't have promise when I was 15 or 11 when it happened. And I went down into the school where that really furnishes the trades people, if you like, joiners, factory fodder, all that kind of a thing. So 15-year-old, I ended up working as a apprentice with a company called Toffolo Jackson. They were into the granite marble business. Yeah. So I was a T-boy for 6 months. And the idea was at some point I would become a quantity surveyor with them. When I left school, I didn't have any qualifications, so I couldn't go to university, couldn't go to college. So I joined Toffolo Jackson as a trainee quantity surveyor, T-boy, did my time with them. During that period, I went to college and got my ONC, my HNC. All this was done at night classes. So I was doing 4 nights a week at night classes at the College of Building. So I got my ONC, got my HNC.
And was this all off your own back? Were you just choosing to do that, or was you kind of being guided to this is what you need?
Well, when I was at school, I wasn't really academic. I liked to play football, enjoy myself. Yeah. So the penny didn't drop with me until I started work. And I realised that if you wanted to get anywhere in business, you really had to have that level of education. Yeah. Even then, business was still quite a competitive ground, if you like. Yep. You know, if 5 people are going for a job and one's got an HNC and one doesn't, the chances are the one with the HNC was going to get it. So once I started in Toffolo Jackson, I was doing my night classes from ONC, HNC. Also realised if I was only with one sub-trade, my plan, which eventually was to try and work as a main contractor as a quantity surveyor, would be difficult to do. So I decided to work with as many sub-trades as I could, build up the experience so that if I didn't have the college or university qualifications, I could go to a main contractor and say, well, I've worked in 6, 7, 8 sub-trades. I've picked up the experience there. So gamekeeper turned poacher, or whatever you like. Yeah.
Good overall knowledge of everything and just picking up as much as you possibly could learn.
So almost every 9 months to 12 months, I changed jobs into a different sub-trade. And I did that up until I was about 20, just going on for 21. And at 21, just before I was 21, I saw an advert for a preservation surveyor. And I had no idea what a preservation surveyor was, but the word surveyor in it. Yeah. Preservation, I had not a clue what preservation meant. So I went along to the interview in the Pond Hotel in Glasgow. I didn't realise at the time, but I was the only person that turned up for the interview. Oh, right. So the guy who was interviewing didn't have much choice. But anyway, I'm there with the platform shoes and the flare trousers. And that time I had hair, big bushy hair, moustache, And so my boss gave me the job. So I had my HNC by that time. He liked the qualifications. He explained a bit about what preservation was, surveying buildings for woodworm, dry rot, rising damp, that kind of a thing. And I liked the idea that you would be out on your own a lot, surveying, meeting people. And the reward system in there was very much based on what you did, not what a team did. So if you worked harder and
there was more reward, there was more chances and stuff.
There was more reward. So that just sounded like the kind of thing I would like to do. So I started with a company called Peter Cox Preservation, as it was at the time, a 21-year-old, and very quickly took to it. They were very good in training, so I did 2 weeks training down in London, although in the second week I had the most foul cold you can imagine, and I was just miserable. And my boss told me shortly after, he says, Les, I was so much for just letting you go at that point because you weren't contributing. You just looked as if you weren't interested.
Yeah.
But I was so miserable. Anyway, when I came up to Scotland, finished my training, did my bit with an experienced surveyor to learn the business, I very quickly did very well at it.
Yeah.
I found I had a good personality. Most of the people I was talking to were ladies, housewives, and because I was so young, I think a lot of them kind of mothered me. And this wee boy's coming in, and I was doing the survey for them.
You had a bit of charm then.
Well, I didn't realise it was charm at the time. It was just innocent youth,
Sometimes the best way, isn't it?
Well, that's what I found, and so I would do my surveys, and I would introduce myself, tell the people what I was going to do, what I would do at the end of it. I'd sit down with them and go over it and all that kind of a stuff. And I would do my survey, did what I promised to do. And I would always at the end of it say to them, if you're ready to make a decision, can we agree to go ahead now? Or if you want some time, can we agree to do a follow-up call and just chat it through? And I would diarise a follow-up call, maybe a week, whatever, in the future at a time that suited them. And what I didn't realise at the time was not many other surveyors in our industry did that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
They just went out and did a survey.
And hoped for the best.
And my view was the postman wasn't a salesman.
Yeah.
If I wanted to get that job, I had to sell it. So if I couldn't sell it on site, and I would try and work out the price there and then for them. If I just say, if you give me 5-10 minutes, I'll work out the price. Because almost everybody wants to know the price when you're doing a survey for their property. So I would give them the price there and then. Most women would say, I'd like to talk to my husband about it. That's perfectly fine. Would you like me to come back and meet your husband? Or, well, I'll just give you a call and we can talk it through. Your husband might have technical ideas about protection and when do we start, when do we finish, all this kind of a thing. So I found in my very first year with the company, out of maybe 40, 45 surveyors, I became the top surveyor almost in my very first year. Yeah, just by doing what I thought was the right thing to do, and it seemed to work. Yeah. So that was about 21 to 22-year-old. By 25, I'd been a top surveyor every year for 4 to 5 years. The manager in the branch I was at in Glasgow left. My boss asked me if I would be the manager, which just caught me right out the blue. I didn't think I was ready for management. I really enjoyed the surveying side of it. So at 25, I was moved into branch management. And I was managing 3 guys who were way older than I was. So as a 25-year-old, I very quickly had to learn diplomacy and how to work with people, how to understand, to find out what motivated them rather than what motivated me, because I was very dynamic. I was very driven. Yeah. Not everybody's like that. So if you're in a team of 3 or 4 people, there's only going to be one Les Meikle, and there's going to be 3 other types who have got all different ideas of where they want to be. And
just different values as well, haven't they? And you know, like you sound like, I can only imagine that you would have been staying late most nights in that business during that period where you were top surveyor, and you were probably, if you'd said to someone, I'll get this quote back to you by X time, then if that meant you worked late or had to start early, I know that by what you're saying, you would go and do it, because very much sales is pretty much a big part of it is doing what you say you're going to do.
Exactly.
That's a big part of it, and that follow-up process that you spoke about as well, like just setting them up in this stage to say later on I'll speak to you about it.
Yes.
It just means that you're building enough rapport here that if they don't say, I'll take your call next week, or I don't want you to come back, then you've done something far wrong here. Yeah. So it all actually stacks up, but I do understand that whereas you were probably driven and you were probably driving forward, and you'd do the extra stuff. Some people, their value is just, I want to do my absolute best, but only between this hour and that hour. Then it's family after that, or whatever it may be, and they're just very rigid in that approach. So I have found that myself over the years as well, that to try and actually accept that not everyone's maybe as driven as you, but they still can add real value. So
well, I mean, very rarely did I let the postman take the report. I would almost always say to the customer, when would it suit you for me to come with the report? And they'll sit down and just chat it through with you, because between now and then you've probably forgotten some of the stuff that I had talked about. And I think once you sit in front of people, your personality comes across. And as you say, it's the deliverable. If you're going to promise something, you're promising it to both of them. My basic promise was I would be there every day of the job. I'd be there at the very end of it while the technician was still there, so that if there was any wee bits of snagging they weren't happy with, they did it while the technician was there. And I would shake their hand and say, are you happy with what we've done? And the answer almost always was yes. So if you've got somebody who's going to pay the bill, or they've got no reason not to, they can't phone up and say, well, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with the next thing. Because you've made sure it's sorted there and then. And I just found that simple thing of delivering what you said you were going to do when you were wanting them to sign the acceptance, to taking it to the end of the...
And it is important to have them steps right, because there's so many people who get into sales that they'll go out, they'll do the survey, they'll maybe get the job accepted, then they just almost like, that's it. Like, there you go, you're passed over now to the operations team. So it's something we work hard on, and like my main business, Taylor Roofs, we work hard on making sure that customer journey follows all the way. Because as you kind of scale up, it's probably harder for you to be on every single job from, start, middle, end, and signing them all off. But you've got to find a way that someone's in control of that and someone's signing them off, and that's another learning kind of process. But it's all of them things that you're saying make complete sense to me. So it's good to know that even back when you started, those kind of core values of just doing what you say you're going to do, turning up when you say you're going to turn up, even just hand delivering the quotes. I encourage our surveyors to try and do that as much as they can now. A lot it's just by email, but I do say, like, if you've spoken to the customer and you've said, sometimes you can't get them a price in the house, so you can't give them it. But if you said, look, does everything make sense to you? Would you like to go ahead, except for the price? We need to discuss that later. And they say yes, then I think you've done your job there. And then it's a case of saying, look, I'll return with the actual price. Do you want me to bring it out to you? We'll have a discussion about it. I used to always find if they said yes, that meant they're probably going ahead with the job, because they want me back in their home. They've had a good enough, time, like with me explaining my expertise and showing them that we know what we're going to do. Whereas if people, like, I rarely probably would get people saying, no, I didn't want you back. But some people had maybe like a wee bit of a sort of that nature where they just wanted space and time, and that was fine. So I would just say that's fine. I'll go, like, you just give me a wee call when you're ready, but you just keep in touch with them. And if you hadn't heard from them, you give them a wee phone call. And a lot of people will see that if they've seen it written down as a sales process, they think that's dead salesy, but it's rapport building. And it's like, business doesn't come for free. You have got to maybe spend 3, 4, 5 interactions with one client just to get that one job. And that's what they deserve, because they're spending a lot of money, they're bringing you into the home, they're trusting you. So I think that's the level of intensity that probably and care that should be
But
given.
there is a job there. And I found most people did want me to deliver the report because they wanted a husband to chat to me and see what was happening. And often, if you're giving them a price and you're firming up on the price when you're taking the report out, you're maybe giving them a guesstimate when you're sitting in front of them. When you're sitting down with the actual price, that's when you might find, well, you're not the least expensive. So I guess the customer's got other prices there. Well, without giving them the price, would you like to give me their specification? And I'll tell you, I'll do a pros and cons. I'll tell you if they're doing less or more than I am. Now, almost always, because I was a very detailed surveyor, technical surveyor, we were almost always doing more than them. And I would say to the customer, that's what needs done. But if you want me to price on less, I can do that. Never did they ask me to price on less.
No, they wanted.
But what they did realise was, for the extra money, they were getting extra work. And I always carried a spare pair of overalls and a torch in my car. so that if the husband was a bit dubious about what I was saying, perhaps, I could say, right, put your overalls on, there's a spare torch, we'll go underneath together, underneath the subfloor, and I'll say, if I've said 19 joist ends and somebody else has said 12, I'll take you to the other 7 and put my screwdriver through the decayed ends of the joist. And once you've done that, you've got the job. Because a lot of companies in our industry would price on less work and then rely on extras. Whereas I try to say to my customer, I've done a good enough survey now that there shouldn't largely be extras. And if there are, it's something I really can't tell. Just now, maybe a concealed timber safe lintel above a window or a door or something like that. But what I've said is what needs done. And if anybody says they're wanting to do less than that.
Because nobody wants surprises.
Well, it's the hardest discussion you ever have is when you're on a job and then you're starting asking for extras, because people do think, well, you're at the madam here, you know, and why didn't you find that out?
And it is understandable. Like, you hate it even happening to yourself when it happens, you know, but especially with preservation, like you were saying, it's probably the worst place that could happen. Even with the best they survey, there's always that potential. But if you've given them the sort of worst case, then that's pretty ideal. So back onto the story then. 25 roughly, branch manager.
25, became a branch manager, looking after 3 other surveyors. As I said, they were a lot older than I was. They didn't take particularly kindly to this young upstart telling them what to do, but I very quickly learned not to tell people to do anything. It was always ask people to do. You know, could you help me out? How would you like to do this? Let's talk about doing this way or that way. And if somebody said to me, well, I think my way's better, well, okay, why don't you do something for me? Try a week doing it my way, try a week doing it your way, and at the end of it, maybe see how it looks at the end of it. They might not do my week as enthusiastically as I would like, but almost always, if they did what I did, which was going out, delivering the reports, spending time with the customer, and a lot of people just don't like asking for the job. And I said, you know, they've got a job to give. You want the job, just ask them for the job. The number of people who would leave a site, my surveyors would leave the site and not ask for the job. So even if I could just get them into that particular mindset.
Because then you can start to handle the person, like the homeowner's fear. And the objections, if there's any. You can then, like, if you ask for it and they say, oh, I'm not too sure about this, like if they say no, there's got to be a reason why, and then that's your job to then put them at ease with whatever that issue is. And sometimes it's maybe they're not quite understood something fully yet, or they're a bit scared, or it might be, again, price. It might be that they've got a quote here that's cheaper. But once you explain, well, we've got more value in our quote here, we can do it at that, but you're doing less work and it's not the job you actually need. So you're better using this value, like you're better taking the value for money, which is, although it's dearer, it's actually no dearer, because it's going to be done right first time and you're going to have whatever warranties and guarantees and whatnot. So no, it's the only way you can possibly progress it. Otherwise, you're just basically being what you would call as maybe like a bit of an order taker. It's like, do you know, you'd be as well as working like taking orders in a shop or something, and it's just, you know, I think being a surveyor and being out there in like with customers and clients and things, I think you've got a bit of a duty to help them to buy, because that's essentially what you are, is like an assistant buyer as such, rather than, and you're bringing them into your world now as well, because they probably don't likely know anything. For us, it's roofs, but in your field it was preservation, that they probably know nothing about it, so they'll be quite anxious as well. So
I mean, if in our business we were taking apart and putting together people's houses, I mean, there were sometimes we could be standing in the ground floor looking up to the sky because we've taken off the roof, the second floor, first floor, and we're standing in the ground floor looking up. So people really need to have that confidence that you're going to do what you say you're going to do excuse me, and that you'll protect the house. And again, if you can talk them through that process, it helps them just understand what the guys are going to do when they come, how they're going to do it, the system. And because I was there every day, if at least the housewife was there, I could tell them if we found anything difficult during the day or something we had to address, or something that's going to affect tomorrow. And
it's just keeping them informed, basically.
And part of, from the very early days, one of my sort of concepts was I didn't want to meet my customers' expectations, which might sound strange. I wanted to exceed them.
Yeah.
So I wanted them, the best salesman I could have is the last person I did a job for.
Yep.
And particularly housewives, and I don't mean to be sexist on this, but they would go and meet all their friends, and if somebody had a woodworm or a dry rot problem, or we had Wise Property Care out, they did a great job, did what they said they were going to do, when they said they were going to do it. And we got so much of our business by referrals.
Yeah.
Well, we did very good marketing. So much, probably half of our business came from referrals.
Yeah, and there's nothing really stronger than a good recommendation from someone who's literally used your company.
Exactly.
It just goes so much further.
Yeah. So I was very much into the customer experience, even from an early day, because I put myself in their place. If I was sitting there, I would be really nervous. I would be very concerned. Somebody's saying they're going to come in and take apart my house and put it back together again.
Yes.
You know, how do I reassure myself that they are going to deliver what they say they're going to do?
Yeah, and that's where they need to trust you, and you can only get that trust by actually like proving yourself credible as an expert in your field, and showing to them that like that's where all those basics come in, like turning up on time, doing what you say you're going to do, return visit with the quote and stuff. I think that stuff's really like gold dust, and even now, because I think you were doing it back then, which was so much better than somebody posting a quotation out or a survey report out. But now it's like, it's just so easy to just send an email, send a text, and just not have that human interaction. But people need that when it's big.
Especially when it's a biggish job.
Yeah, big job that could be quite scary, because even like for us, like taking an old roof off and putting a new one on, like no any sort of structural stuff, but like, you know, the roof coverings and off and back on, that's like not a big deal to us. But some homeowners, like they might think, how long's the roof going to be off? Am I going to have no roof for like 3 days? Like they actually don't always understand. A lot of people do, but a lot of people just know nothing about roofs. So they're like, they need reassured that, look, this is going to be fine. The job will start here. This is how it's all going to go. If something goes wrong, this is what we'll do. And this is all the steps. And they want to see that they're going to get from where they are now, which is in pain, to the other side of having peace of mind, roofs, wind and watertight, and they've got their warranties and everything, the place is left tidied. You know, they just want to know that they're going to get from A to B as safely as possible, and you've got to make them trust that you're going to do that, and then you need to deliver on it, like you said. That's the customer.
And when something goes wrong, dealing with it as soon as you can. Yeah. So once I became manager, I still had the same philosophy of getting out on every job every day. Yeah. Because my view was, if I could resolve any issues on the job, I'm not going to come into any issues in my office. So if you kill it on site, it makes your whole management job a lot easier. You can then focus on training, improving the people that you've got. So almost every day, I'd start about 7:30. My guys would turn up on site about 7:45. So I'd pick a different site every day. I wanted to be on at 7:45 just to make sure they were there on time. First thing they were trained to do was go and introduce themselves to the customer, have their clean overalls. At that point, them and I would go in and explain what they were going to do, the sequence of events. Or was there a different sequence that would suit the customer, where it was possible to change that sequence? We would bring the hoovers in, we would bring the protection in. So the very first thing the customer saw was that for 45 minutes, we were protecting their property. We were going to use our hoover, not theirs.
Professional.
You know, so you're setting this whole scene. Then the techs would go and get changed into their working overalls, do their job. At the end of the day, I was on every job at the end of the day as well. So we might, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 jobs running. I could get there from about 2:30 to 4:30 every day. It's only a 5 or 10 minute chat you're doing, or going in and having a quick look around. And as I say, if there's a problem, we didn't have mobiles at that time. So you had to be there just to understand what the issue was. And if technicians were standing waiting for you to come, you were losing production. So the more you were on site, the more you could resolve the issues, the smoother the job went. And the customer, after that first day, when the customer saw you doing what you said you were going to do, you could see the shoulders going down. You could see them relaxing a little bit. And every time you met them after that, it was chilled, no problems. If there was an issue, something they were concerned about, it was resolved there and then to their satisfaction. You know?
That's the way to do it, for sure.
So people, to me, were the customer was absolutely critical to the business. making them as happy as they could be.
Yeah.
And if we did 1,000 jobs in a year, hopefully that was 1,000 salesmen out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
all selling for
definitely.
us.
No, definitely. And how did that progress then? What was did you build up within that company further?
Yeah. So from 25 to about 30, I was a branch manager. At 30, I was asked to become a regional manager for the Scottish region. Then moving into sort of 35s, I became my region extended down to about Sheffield.
Yeah.
So I was dealing with Inverness down to Sheffield, so quite a sizable area. I was regional manager at that time, so I had area managers underneath me, then it was branch managers underneath them. So we had a very good hierarchy. And what I tried to continue to do was train people in my image, if you like.
Yeah.
Because it worked for me, it should work for them.
Yeah, the same steps as all the ones you just spoke about there.
So tried to get the surveyor doing what I did as a surveyor, tried to get the managers doing what I did as a manager, trying to get the area managers to do what I was doing as an area manager. And so if you have people in your mindset, what you're trying to deliver, and from a very early stage, I said the customer is king. We must absolutely deliver not just the minimum what they expect. We need to exceed their expectations. And so everybody bought into it, from the girl that answered the phone to the surveyors to the technicians. And part of my philosophy with the technicians was to pay the top industry rate.
Yep.
Because one of the most expensive things in business is churn of people.
Yeah.
So my view was, if I paid the top rates, A, it would be difficult for people to tap them and take them away from us. And B, I would have happy people, people. And we gave them incentives based on exceeding the customer's expectations. So it's just trying to get my mindset down to everybody. As I say, the girl that answered the phone, don't let it ring more than 3 times. Answer the phone with a smile.
Yep.
How can you help that customer? If they phone in during the day and leave a message, and if the person the message was intended for didn't come in, because at that time we didn't have mobile phones, then you phone the customer back and tell them, we've still got your message here. Les hasn't come back into the office yet, so don't worry, we've not forgotten about you. As soon as Les comes in, you'll get the message and we'll look after it. So it was having a system that the customer always felt valued and important.
Yep.
And the girls got to know the customer, as well.
Nah, it's good that. And it's a lot of it's probably as basics.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's what makes it even more important, because companies who can do the basics really well and really consistently, they just get so much further ahead than the company who does it a one-off great job here but is then terrible on the next one, and then another one-off great here but terrible on the next one. You really need that consistency. So that makes a lot of sense.
Well, moving it forward, and I'm going to jump a lot of years here, when I did have my own business, very much we were into the video and technology side of things.
Yeah.
We had a system whereby when a customer gave us an inquiry, I did a video, which was to say to the customer at that stage, thank you very much for giving us your inquiry. By now you'll have a time and date when the surveyor's going to come out and have a look at the property. This is what you can expect from the surveyor when he comes to the property. So he'll arrive, he'll introduce himself, he'll tell you how he's going to do his survey. Then he'll do his survey, then he'll sit down with you at the end of it, and he'll go over what he's found, and he'll put a price together, and he'll talk with you about when you would like the work to progress.
Yeah.
So the customer gets that video before we even arrive.
Yeah.
If the customer gives us an acceptance, they then get a second video from me, which tells them what to expect from the technicians. So you can expect the technicians to come about 7:45 in the morning. At that time, we did have mobile phones. Mm-hmm. So if the technician thinks he's going to be late at all, any more than 5-10 minutes, he'll give you a telephone call with a new estimated time of arrival.
Yep.
And you would not believe the amount of brownie points that got us from customers.
Yeah.
Because most of our customers were ladies.
Yeah.
Most of them had kids. Yeah. They were doing the school run, the shopping. And if you've got kids, you know what kind of pressure the wife's under.
Yep.
So just being able to tell the lady customer that we're going to be late, and that allowed them to drop the kids off and come back. The guys could sit and have a cup of coffee in the van.
No waiting around on you and things like that,
And that just won us so much.
Yeah.
So we would say to them that if the technician's going to be late, they'll phone you and tell you. When they arrive, they'll arrive with their nice clean uniforms. They'll sit down and go over with you the sequence of events. If it's 3 or 4 rooms are involved, they'll talk through how they envisage it. And if you have an issue with that or would like us to do it a different way, if we can do it that way, we'll do it. The technicians will then protect your property, and then they'll start the property. And at the end of the day, the lead technician will take you around the job, explain what he did that day, explain what he's going to do the next day, and if he had any challenges, what they were, how he overcame them. And we did that for every day of the project. And also, you can expect the branch manager and or the surveyor or both to pop in every day just to ensure that things are going as we anticipated.
Yeah.
Because very much the job's out of the surveyor's head, put onto paper. So sometimes it was important to just have the surveyor and the technicians understand this is how I've priced the job, this is how I envisaged it going. Because there's a fast and a slow way to do a job. So just wanting to make sure they do it the way that the surveyor
that has been thought out.
Had it in his mind. You know? And when the job was finished, the customer would get another video from me just saying, you know, thank you for giving us the work. The work, I'm sure, is now complete to your satisfaction. If there's any remaining issues, please don't hesitate to contact myself. Thank you for awarding Wise Property Care your contract, and if you have any friends or that you would like to recommend us to, we had a wee discount scheme that we give if they referred us on to someone. There's a wee something in it for that.
That's really good.
Customer. So these 3 videos that communicated from the guy who owned the business all the way through what to expect.
Yeah, and how did you have similar videos that went to the team for training them, or did you just train them? And
well, the team saw all these videos as well, so that they understood what the customer was expecting.
Yeah, so like if the customer's been told on a video the guys are going to turn up at 7:45 and they keep turning up at 8:30, then there's a big issue. So the culture's sort of built around.
Well, they know that the customer's expectation is that, and they know the customer is expecting that if they're not going to be there at 7:45 to expect a phone call with a new estimated time of arrival, because you do get caught up in traffic, you do get van breakdowns. You know,
exactly.
And so often it sounds like an excuse the van's broken down, but how often do you get a flat tyre in the motorway going to a job?
We had one the other morning. I was actually in the gym early on, and it was I seen one of the guys posting in like a flat tyre and saying his spare had somehow been taken out of the van, and I was thinking, it just happens.
Yes.
But nobody believes it because they're just like, oh, typical tradesman, the van's broke down or the tyre's been flat. But when you can communicate properly with the customer and sometimes maybe even prove it as well, saying, look, there's the flat tyre, he's away getting it sorted, they will be there at like such and such a time. I think what you said about making that call ahead to say we're running late, I think communication's just so key.
Yeah. And that, as I say, that one is so many brownie points. Whenever we got reviews, it was the call saying they were going to be a bit late for whatever reason, getting a new estimated time of arrival and working to that. And it also, I mean, it was easy. The mobile phones were great things, particularly when they had cameras, because if there was something on a site that needed done, they could take a photograph or a video, talk to you about it in real time. And people were getting and now are so used to immediate decisions, immediate rectification of their issues.
That makes a lot of sense. What was when you started Wise Property Care?
Yeah.
You kind of jumped ahead a wee bit. But
I was 43 and we had sold the business to an American organisation who, before they bought us, had given us all assurances that they wouldn't delayer the senior management. I was a managing director by that time. And the first thing they did was delayer the managing directors, the senior management, the people who had built the company, the builders of the company. They had decided they didn't need them. So they were left with the followers, but not the leaders, which seemed very strange to me. But it encouraged, if not forced me to do something I had never really planned to do. I'd never planned to start my own business. I enjoyed working for Peter Cox. I'd been with him since I was 21. So almost everybody in the business I had employed, I had trained. I knew their strengths or weaknesses. We had a great business, was making good money. So to find myself at 43 being made redundant, I was a difficult place. You're not quite sure what you're going to do at that point. Anyway, sometimes fate steps in. And while I was working with redundancy, I got a phone call from someone who used to work for me who was working with a competitor, a company called Timberwise. And he phoned up and says, Les, any chance of a job? And I says, oh, look, I'm sorry, I'm actually working with redundancy, but why do you need a job? And he says, well, Timberwise have just went into administration through their parent company. Looks like we're all going to be made redundant. And I thought, well, there's an opportunity there. So I found out who were dealing with the administration, spoke to them and asked them if I could make a bid for the Scottish part of this particular business.
Yeah.
They said yes. So from somebody who'd ran a business but never owned a business, I was very quickly trying to put the funds together to be able to buy this business, this Scottish part of a national company.
Yeah.
So we did. We managed to get the price together. We did have a hiccup on the day I was meant to pay the business. Nobody had mentioned VAT. So I just managed to scrape the money together to buy the business. So it was an asset purchase.
Yeah.
And then he said, but there's VAT. And I said, VAT? So I had to pay the funds by 11 o'clock on a Friday morning at a Royal Bank in Clyde Bank somewhere. So to dash to my mum and dad, say to my mum and dad, look, this is a situation. I think it was $5,000 I needed.
Yeah.
Any chance I could have get $5,000 out your savings? And God love them, they said yes. And they didn't have a lot of money. This was probably a big chunk of their savings.
Yeah.
Gave me the $5,000. I managed to get the money paid to the bank. And I've told the story often that if my car had been in a multi-storey car park that day, I couldn't have got it out. I'd actually used the money in my pockets. Every penny I had to put together that day to buy the business. But that was my working capital gone. So I've just got a business with something like 4 surveyors, 2 office staff, 8 or 10 technicians, and it's in the middle of the month. I think it was 9th of September. And I was going to have a wage to pay at the end of the month, and I had absolutely no money.
Oh, no.
So I brought all the people in and explained to them. I actually talked to them before I bought the company and said, this is going to be very tight. You're out of a job. I'm out of a job. We can team together here and try and make this work.
Yeah.
And, when I said, look, I had to use my working capital to buy the business, I need you all to work on your credit cards for a while until I've got the money until we're trading and we're making some decent money. Every one of them, to a man, said yes.
Wow.
So they paid for their own fuel. They paid for some of the timber and stuff that we needed to do the jobs on the credit card. We had an agreement with the administrator that we would collect the outstanding debts because people were unlikely to pay if they didn't get a guarantee.
Yeah.
So we said we would offer the guarantee, collect the debt for a percentage of the debt.
Yeah.
So very quickly we pulled in those debts, as many of them as we could. And it was actually those debts that financed the business for the first 6 months.
All right.
Because the administrator didn't ask for the money that we collected for about 6 months. So that actually became our working capital.
Wow.
So
you just find a way, don't you?
Needs must.
Yeah,
Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. So that was how we financed the business for the first 6 months, because the bank, who agreed an overdraft with us on day one, never actually provided the overdraft until about a year, 14 months later. And I'm absolutely convinced to this day they were waiting to see if we were going to make it or not before they would give us the overdraft. Yeah. But we needed the overdraft in day one.
Yeah, typical banks.
But they never gave us the overdraft.
Give you it when you don't need it.
Well, then when they came to us and said, we can give you the overdraft now once you've seen the first year's figures.
Yeah.
And I says, well, you can stick your overdraft. And I did. We never needed an overdraft after that because we were very profitable in our first year. And we moved forward quite dynamically after that. But again, I couldn't have done it without people. Yeah. The people who knew Les Meikle, because most of them had employed previously and had gone off and get taken to other companies. And this is where I think in business, your own personal brand counts for so much. Yeah. If you're seen as somebody who's morally strong, does what they say they're going to do, honour your words, your commitments. To me, a handshake contract was as good for me as any kind of contract. Yeah. And that gets round. Clients understand your personal brand. Your employees understand your personal brand. And I think that's why people bought into Les Meikle at the time, because they knew to trust me from how I'd acted and how I'd performed before.
That makes sense.
By that
Especially
time, I'd been in the business for about 21 years, so they knew me. I was well known.
Especially with like them putting stuff on credit cards and things like that. It would probably have been a bit scary, but
it was scary for them. I mean, I tried to keep it to an absolute minimum. You know, so most of them, it was just the fuel that they had to put in their car. And then we got a particular big debt in very quickly. And so we had no costs on that debt. So that whole debt funded
that's pretty good.
the business, you know, so really, really scary. And I remember, you talk about losing sleep at times. There was times in that first 3 to 6 months where sleep was very hard to come by. But you stick with your ethos of exceeding your customers' expectations. I was quite pleased that maybe 60 to 70% of the professionals I dealt with came with me to my new company. Not everybody did, which surprised me, because you kind of think, you know, everybody loves you, everybody will come with you if you move to a different job. But probably about 60 or 70% did. And I was so grateful for that. And again, they were buying in not to the new company name, they were buying into Les Meikle. So it was Les Meikle they knew would deliver, and they were used to that level of service. And that's what they wanted to continue with, and that's what they got from
really good
from the company I went on to. So that was 43. I started the business with a 20-year plan. I wanted to sell it when I was 63. I had a certain figure in mind that I wanted to sell it for, and a certain growth strategy that I wanted to do to go from 0 to 20. So we, our first year, we turned over $1 million. So I knew what the starting point was. We had $1 million to get to, I think it was just over $6 million in the 20-year period. And I worked out how much I had to grow every month over 20 years to get to that particular growth span. The reason I had a particular figure in mind was I wanted to sell to a PLC company. I knew they wouldn't really think of any companies under 5 million turnover or under $1 million profit. So that was the decider on getting the growth to a certain figure. And that's what we embarked on. And we broke it down to, I think, about 1.6% a month we had to grow for 20 years to get where we wanted. So that's roughly 20% a year. So you're almost doubling your size every 5 years. And if you do the maths, that gets you to where we wanted to be at the end of 20 years. And I'd learned strategy and tactics through my time with Peter Cox, because they did fabulous training. And if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, is the old expression. And if you don't have goals, it's like putting 2 football teams in a park without nets at the end of it. They just run about having a great time, but they're not actually achieving anything. So by having those goals and sharing them with the staff and everybody that worked for us, they knew we were at growth. So we were going to grow, we were going to grow profitably. We were going to do it with a certain ethos. And we also decided to profit share with the staff. So I decided that 80% of the profits was enough for me. I would be happy to cascade 20% of the profits down to the staff. So at the end, when we were making £1 million profit, we were passing £20,000, £200,000, over a year down to our staff. So everybody from the girl that answered the phone wanted that to continue and to grow. So how they dealt with the customer on the phone, how we dealt with messages, how we dealt with complaints, if there was any. Had everybody focused on profit.
Gets everybody bought into it.
And so many business people don't want to share their profits or share what they're making with their staff. My view was be open and upfront, and I published my results all the time. A full set of accounts, because I knew I would be getting monitored by my competition. And the company that I wanted to buy me, I knew would be monitoring me. So that as the time came, when I was ready to tap them on the shoulder and say, right, I'm ready to sell the business, are you interested? I know they would have been following me for whatever number of years they wanted to see how I was doing. And I made sure that the company that I wanted to buy us, that we would be filling in a weak spot for them. So they were particularly good at one part of the sector of business, and I was particularly good in another sector. And just taking us on would really
opened a new market for them, but it was already...
Yes, it gave them a strength, it was a weakness.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking of your 20-year strategy about selling your business, or 10 years or 5 years, whatever your length of strategy is, you need to know what your destination is, what it looks like, what you have to do. Otherwise, how do you plan to get there? And which growth strategy are you going to use to get to that particular place? So we did a combination of growing organically, by acquisition, by diversification, and that gave us the growth we needed. I mean, acquisitions are good for speed, but they can be expensive.
Yeah.
But one of the tricks I learned very quickly was to acquire the assets of businesses who just recently went out of business.
Yeah.
Within days.
Yeah.
You know, if you get word on the grapevine that so-and-so's went out of business, get to the administrator quickly with an open checkbook and say, I'm prepared to give you this for the assets of that business.
Yeah.
Often you got it for ridiculously low prices.
Yeah.
I hope there's no accountants listening to this who do administration. But usually those size of companies were given to the most junior person in the accountants that were doing the administration.
Just to get it kind of ticked
and all they
off
wanted
and get rid
was
of it.
out the way, and they got their fee.
Yeah.
So I travelled up to Aberdeen, I travelled to the borders, I travelled all over Scotland with a checkbook when I heard somebody went bust and says, I can write a check for you right now for the assets of this business. I want the name, I want the brand, I want the websites, I want their past inquiries, I want their old contracts, because I would go back to past customers and say, this company has went burst, so your guarantee is now really not worth anything.
Yeah.
But if you would like me to re-inspect the work that's been done, and if I'm happy with it, for a small fee, we will give a guarantee for the remainder of the term of that. So again, people don't have a full taste about the company going bust, because you're coming back to them and saying,
and you're saving
we're doing something for you on this.
That's interesting.
So I think I acquired 10 small businesses that went bust, and it gave me areas that I wasn't particularly strong in, gave me some strength in those different areas, from Edinburgh, Inverness, Perth, down in the borders. All those different areas became strengths rather than weaknesses. I did buy one company that was a going company, and that worked well for us. So but once you get into doing something and it works for you, you just keep repeating it quite well.
That's an interesting strategy. And what so see it at sort of height then, what was the size of Wise Property Care then?
Well, when at the very end, it was just over 6 million turnover.
Yeah.
It was making about £1 million a year.
Yeah. And how many people was in there?
Maybe about 40 or so.
Yeah.
Maybe 50.
It's quite lean, to be honest, then, for the amount of turnover.
Yes. I mean, we were extremely efficient.
Yeah.
Again, because we employed very good people. All our vans were new, all the equipment, we gave the people the best equipment that we could, so that there was no reason why jobs couldn't be done quickly to the right standard. And the guys they were rewarded on bringing a job out on time.
Yep.
So you know how expensive it is for a job to run over a day. If a job runs over a day, you've lost all your profit.
Yeah, it's gone,
So you've got to get a job finished in that time. So we would incentivise our technicians to get the job done in that time. That worked for them, it worked for us. And if they brought the job out a day earlier, they would get paid the full time for the job. And then they get another job put in the day they've saved. So they're getting paid twice for that day. So we called that a sort of targeting system, and it worked very well.
Yeah, no, it's a good
So our guys were very efficient. They would size up the job very quickly themselves, anticipate any problems, resolve them.
Yeah.
And as I say, it gets back down to this, you pay people well, you get the best people in the industry. And our churn was less than 0.2%.
Wow, yeah.
We very rarely lost anyone because we looked after everybody.
Yeah.
And I used to have a lesism that I called F.A.M.E, that for employees, whenever I always had an open door policy, and if ever an employee walked through the door, they wanted F.A.M.E. They either wanted facilitated, appreciated, motivated, or empowered.
Yeah.
So that's where F.A.M.E came for. And I had that on my wee laptop just to remind me. I always looked at it when somebody came in, thinking, right, this person's wanting one of those four things. So facilitated, make sure they've got the best computers or the best tools in the van. Appreciated. I read a book by Kenneth Blanchard, The 1 Minute Manager, and that taught me how to express appreciation for people as often as you possibly could.
Yeah.
Just saying to somebody, that was great what you did there. You see their chest puffing out.
It makes such a difference.
And they're happy, even if it's just a girl on a phone call and you hear them come off the call and you say to them, that was fabulous the way you dealt with that customer there. I was with you the whole journey. And I'm sure that customer's away feeling confidence in coming to Wise Property Care. So again, appreciation was something I was never strong at because I was too busy doing the business.
Yeah.
And I learned very quick. I learned through the training and this particular book by Kenneth Blanchard, the 1 Minute Manager, about 1 minute appreciation and appraisals and so forth. And motivation, understanding what motivates people. Because, we had some surveyors who might have been motivated by a fancy car. Mm-hmm. Some were motivated by money. Some were family people who were motivated by holidays. Yeah. So if you try and motivate somebody who wants more holidays with a fancy car, it's not going to work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's understanding what motivates your people and then trying to marry that into what you're trying to achieve. So if I achieve what I want to achieve, you can achieve your motivation as well. So it's very much...
That makes sense.
And the best time to find that out is at the interview.
Yeah.
Because you don't want a square peg in a round hole 6 months into the business. You want to find out what that person is. And you come up with the questions that you can ask. It can try and tease out of somebody what motivates them,
Almost like, where do you see yourself being in 5 years or something to that effect?
Or what makes you go home at night and punch the air and say to your wife, I had a great day today. If you can find out what makes them go to the work, yes, I had a great day, and you can give them more of those days, then they're going to enjoy their job.
It's quite inspiring hearing you speak about it all, to be honest.
Well, and empowering as well. So often in small businesses, you employ people then want to do their jobs. Yeah. You've got to train them in a way that they understand that there is a process before you will empower them, but you'll give a bit of power all the way through that process. And then when you hand them the reins, don't be afraid to come into the office, but don't come in with a question. Come in with a solution. Yeah. And we'll talk through the solution. And they very quickly get into that way of working. They knew if they come in and say, Les, I've got a problem, but my question was going to be, well, what's your solution? Yeah. If they come in and say, what do you think I should do? I'm not going to answer that question. I'm paying you for the solution. Yeah. So you come up with the best solution you've got, then we'll talk it through. And if we want to amend it, we'll amend it. But it's starting to teach them to think for themselves. Yeah. And it got over this. They'd come in with the most silly questions. And I say, well, you know the answer to this. Why are you coming in to me?
Sometimes people just want a bit of reassurance, don't they? But then you
but
kind
once
of
you
need to build that
them,
in them to say, look, you're good enough to make this decision.
And they're not going to get crucified for a mistake. Yeah. Look, you make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So don't worry about it. As long as we learn by it and don't make it another week time or 2 weeks down the road. So learn by your mistakes if you make mistakes. And if it is something you really want my advice on, come to me with a solution, then I'll talk you through any wee weaknesses I might see on that. And if you want to change it, change it. Yeah. But there were some strategic decisions I would make where maybe my operations director would say, I don't really agree with that. Well, okay, well, let's talk it through. And if at the end of it you still don't agree with it, you do it your way, but be prepared to change if it's not quite working out. Yeah. Because some people don't like your ideas. They prefer their ideas. And if you can that's why I like them coming in with a solution, because it was their solution, not mine. Yeah. So if they can go out and make something happen because it was their idea, it works a lot better.
It is good for people to be empowered and have their own decision making. Like, there's nothing worse than maybe one of the team comes to a manager, for example, and says, "Oh, I want more money, or I want this, or I need this." Like that F.A.M.E thing you're talking about, comes to them with that, and then their answer is, "Oh, well, I'll go and speak to the owners then, or I'll go and speak to this person." It's like having enough of a relationship there that you've actually guided that person, you know enough about them that you can make your own decision with them to say, look, I'm not even taking that to the directors. Like, this is what you need to do. If you want more money, this is here's like a personal development plan for you. If you're needing something else facility wise, right, I can see that you've been working hard and that van's maybe not the best van for you. We'll get you something new, or we'll get you a new set of tools, or whatever it might be. It's there's a lot of lessons in this.
Yeah,
there's a lot of lessons in what you're saying.
F.A.M.E did so well for me. Yeah. And as I say, I just put the 4 letters together and made it sound like F.A.M.E. And a lot of the companies and people that I mentor, I try and give them that same philosophy. Yeah. That whenever somebody comes to the boss or the owner of the business, they want one or two parts of F.A.M.E. Yeah. And just be aware of it. And I would always try and get the appreciation bit all the time in. So whatever else they come in for, I would try and get the
As
appreciation
well.
bit in
That
there.
makes sense.
You know, and also, I mean, I would do emails to my salespeople every morning. Let's say my operations director gave me the figures by about 8:30 every morning, so I knew who had a good day the day before and who had a poor day.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people who've had a poor day are the ones that need a wee bit of reassurance.
Yeah.
You know, you could
Bit
say
of
to somebody, you know, George, you've had a poor wee run for the last 4 or 5 days. Don't worry about it. I know you're going to come good.
Yeah.
And then, I've got this in the pipeline. I've got that in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And so it's not a bollocking call.
Yeah.
It's a G them up.
Yeah.
And the guy that has done well, giving him a wee call and just saying, well done,
Yeah.
Jim. That was a great day you had yesterday. Big job came in. I knew you've been telling me it's been coming in for a while.
Yeah.
But well done.
Yeah.
So again, it's the
Makes a
owner
difference.
not being displaced from the workforce the
Yeah.
further up he gets in the business.
Yeah.
It's keeping that contact there that people
Yeah.
love to hear from the boss. They like
Definitely.
a bit of reassurance, a bit of appreciation, a G up, just a bit of understanding when they're going through a tough time.
It makes
you
a
know?
lot of sense. And then so you eventually you fulfilled the dream as such, the 20-year plan. Did it actually take the 20 years?
It took almost precisely 20 years, and the sale price that I got was precisely the sale price
Yeah.
that I had set out in my 20-year vision.
Yeah.
So I gave up the business. I handed it over. The day I handed it over, there was tears and snorters everywhere from my staff and from me.
Yeah.
I mean, that was heartbreaking, handing over my business after 20
wow.
years. But one of the deals was the day I handed it over, I walked away.
Yeah.
'Cause
Like
I
instantly, were you just out of it? Wow.
I couldn't have worked in a business for someone else, my business.
Yeah.
I couldn't have somebody else.
That's the way to do the deal,
Change.
wasn't it? You don't want to be tied in and then probably working for someone. And
Well, that's it. And
you
to
seen what happened in that first company that you were in when the Americans bought it and they
Yes.
changed everything.
Yes.
So that would have been harder if it was once your business as well, and then to go
Yeah.
through something like that.
Well, one of the things that the company that bought it said they wanted from the business was the pixie dust, as they called it,
Yeah.
what made the business special. And then as soon as they had it, it was like putting the business in a shower and they washed all the pixie dust off it
Yeah.
and tried to make it like the company that they were.
Yeah.
Yet they could have learned so much from the business they were acquiring.
Yeah.
But again, it was accountants that were overseeing the acquisition.
Yeah.
And to me, entrepreneurs have a gift.
Yeah.
Many of them have a gift. They often need balanced out by people who can soften them a wee bit, because
Yeah.
sometimes entrepreneurs can be very driven, overly driven sometimes. But again, the mix of the people in the business has to be someone who can soften that a bit
Yeah.
and allow the entrepreneur to drive the business, the future, the vision. And you've got someone maybe in operations who
Yeah.
softens that a wee bit and helps everybody understand it and run with the vision as
Yeah,
well.
it's very much. I read a book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, and it's all about the visionary and the integrator.
Yes.
So it's no good just having somebody with a big
Yes.
vision and all the ideas. It's somebody who can actually implement them and make them happen. And I think that's why they call it rocket fuel, because it goes a lot
Yes.
faster that way. But you've always got to get yourself surrounded by, I don't think it's just one visionary, one integrator. I think it's like throughout the teams, like
Yeah.
visionaries and integrators in all the teams, so that somebody's got the ideas but they actually might need to lean on somebody else to do like the sort of admin stuff or
Yeah.
the actual implementation of making it happen.
Well, you've probably heard of how people can be categorized as by colours.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurs are often high reds,
Yeah.
very dynamic, very vision focused.
Yeah.
And you've got different colours in your business, yellows, oranges and blues and
Yeah.
stuff. People, maybe yellows an administrator, blues are people persons.
Yeah.
And you need that mix, because sometimes the entrepreneur can be the most destructive force in the business
Yeah.
because he expects everybody to be like him or her.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way.
No,
That's where you've got to
you need that-
understand
you need that
what
balance.
motivates people,
Yeah.
and to have people there who can soften the entrepreneur's
Yeah.
drive
Definitely.
to something that the people can manage. I think there was one book I read where the author equated it to being in a bus.
Yeah.
So he's the driver, and everybody in the bus has got to be in the right seat in the bus
Yep.
and to understand the role that they're playing. And if you've got the wrong person in the wrong seat, it doesn't
Yeah.
work out. You've got to have the right people. And
You see it. So I think as my business has grown, like you see it more clearly. I think it's hard when you're actually like very much like hands on and like in the like really embroiled in the day to day. It's harder to see. But sometimes when we spoke about it before we came on air, but that helicopter view, you can
Yeah.
see who's maybe in the wrong seat at that point. You go, this person's really, really good. They've got all the right values. They've got the right skills, but they're actually just in the wrong area. Like they'd be better over here. And that's sometimes the importance of coming out of your business and working on it rather than in it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what you're doing now, isn't it? You're mentoring now, and you're giving back, and you're teaching people those skills. So is that?
Well, I've been doing mentoring now for about 25 years. And I've usually got about half a dozen companies on the go at any one time. And my idea, it's a bit philanthropic. It's about giving back. You've amassed all this knowledge. You've made the mistakes. You know, you want to try and help people, A, do well, and B, avoid making the mistakes pitfalls, that you've made. You know, it's people mistakes, finance mistakes, customer mistakes, whatever it might be. Yeah. Just trying to help them see their vision. You know, the analysis I used is like, businesses are on a business highway. You've got your on-ramp to get on the business highway. And you wouldn't dream of going on a journey without knowing what exit you were going to take. Yeah. And how long it's going to take to get to that exit and what the business is going to look like when you get there. So trying to help the various businesses understand their exit and what they want, what time span do they want it. And if we know the starting point and the end, we can work it back to a staged process and how they're going to get to achieve what they want to achieve and which growth strategy they're going to use, if it's organic, acquisition, diversification, franchising, whatever it might be, to help them get to that particular spot. Yeah. And often you see the light come on in their eyes because there's so much in the forest dealing with the job day in, day out, that they're not seeing the road ahead. You know, it's almost like walking across a river on stepping stones, but there's a mist on the river and you can only see a couple of stones ahead of you. But you know there's a bank on the other side and you want to get there. And it's just having the confidence to keep taking the steps. And you know, if you've thought it through right, that the steps will be there. Yeah. You just have to keep taking. You'll have setbacks. Yeah. So you'll have bad times, you'll have good times. The biggest setbacks to me were people leaving. That's where I had this philosophy of absolutely making sure people bought into the business, bought into the vision, and were so hard for people to take away from us. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I think what I was thinking of there is when you're talking about like that stepping stone in the mist, it's almost like sometimes you've probably got to take that little leap of faith as well and just trust that your foot will land on that stone. And if it doesn't, that you're willing to get back up and go again. Yeah. I think that probably wraps us up, Les. That was amazing. Just so many lessons in there. And I wish you all the best in the future with everything you're doing, and well done on all your successes. Well, thank you. And if F.A.M.E would ever like to chat to me, I'm always happy to share my experiences and share my business philosophies and anything that they think might help them with their business. I love entrepreneurs, I love business people, and I'd love to see them do well. So what's the best way to get in touch with you if anybody does? We can probably put a link in the podcast. I can give an email address. And we'll put your details in. Thanks again, Les. That was pleasure. Amazing. Thank you, mate. Thanks very much, Jamie.